Hello, and welcome back to This Might Sound Strange, a horror fiction podcast where tarot cards guide the conversation. I'm Michelle, I'm one of your co-hosts, and my fellow host Maya will be joining in just a moment. You might know me from my book reviews on Macabre Daily or my weekly horror newsletter called Scare Me, and Maya brings almost a decade of reading tarot to our show. Together, we started this podcast to delve deeper into our favorite horror and weird lit books. And I have a cat making a lot of background noise today, which is very appropriate because today we will also be joined by Stacey Yu to talk about her debut novel, Kitten. Kitten comes out on August 4th, so a little bit earlier this week at the time that we'll release the episode. And it skews a little bit more weird literary fiction, I would say, than horror. But as you'll hear, the novel forced me to confront one of my greatest fears, which is feeling my feelings. Kitten is set at the precarious edge of adulthood. We meet our main character, Katie, shortly after her college graduation. Her life as a student is over, but her life as an adult hasn't quite begun. We watch her struggle to navigate this exact precise moment and witness her complicated relationships with her estranged mother, her wealthy older boyfriend, and his family's cat, Silver. And the result is a novel that I found compulsively readable. It's delicate, tragic, funny, at times gross. It vividly captures the precise, dizzying moments when life teeters at the intersection of so many possible paths and how overwhelming that can be. And as you'll hear, the cards prompted us to go deep on class, on self-actualization, complex family dynamics, and so much more. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider writing a review or a comment wherever you're listening to help others find the show. And if you do, send us a screenshot with your best mailing address. We will put something fun in the mail for you. All of the details for that, including how to contact us, are in today's show notes. Okay, without further ado, let's see what the cards have in store for our conversation with Stacey Yu. Stacey, how are you doing? How are you holding up with the heat wave in London?
I'm good. I'm okay. I think I feel really lucky and kind of like I'm dodging the majority of the heat wave because of my air conditioning unit. I feel like I have to lie sometimes or keep it on the down low to my friends who are suffering massively. But yeah, I'm not doing as bad as I could be.
Did you move to London recently? For some reason in my head, I was like, oh, Stacey's in New York. But I think I just maybe was thinking that because publishing New York. But...
Yeah, well, I moved to London 3 years ago. I feel like it's both recent and a while now.
How are you liking it so far? I've only been to London once and it was mega tourist, hit the highlights and then headed back to school. But
yeah, no, I love it. I used to live in New York for college and actually, I never lived there after college, even though I was working in publishing. That was totally remote because of COVID. When I first went to London, I was like, this is just a bigger, worse New York. But I don't feel that way anymore. I think that was just my college brain feeling super superior to everything. But yeah, I love it now. It is so much bigger. I feel like London is a place to be lived in and not really to be visited, I think. There's other cities that are great for tourism and beautiful and traversable easily. But London, I feel like it really grows on you once you have your favorite park and your favorite pub. And yeah, I just feel like it's a nice place to live in.
Yes, definitely. I can totally see that. We definitely have a big span of time zones. Maya and I are both on the West Coast. So she's in LA. I'm in the sticks in Washington. I live in a rural place,
nice.
But yeah. And it's funny because last weekend we also had another interview with a UK author who actually blurbed your book. So we interviewed Lucy Rose and she was like, I'm so jealous you're talking to Stacey. She's like, I loved Kitten so much. So yeah, that was just a really funny coincidence. And she says hi, so.
Aww. I'll say hi to her after this. She is so sweet. I remember DMing her just before Christmas because I followed her Substack for a while and I read The Lamb and I was like, I feel like you might like my book because the mother-daughter relationship is super intense in The Lamb as it is in a different way in Kitten. And she replied immediately. I was really shocked because I've been writing these letters to authors asking them to read and blurb Kitten if they had interest or time. And obviously a lot of those just go with nothing. You don't really hear back. But yeah, it was a really nice thing to get before Christmas. So I'm very fond of her.
So lovely. She's just as lovely as she in person as she seems to be on her Substack.
Yeah.
She is so genuine. just, yeah, she's wonderful. So, and I feel like I was already interested in Kitten, but when I saw that she blurbed it, I was like, all right, move it to top priority. Like that is like worth its weight in gold for like those of us with like mommy issues who like creepy stuff. So
Yeah, yes. And it's so interesting because like, I mean, she's like a horror writer, and like Lamb is like a horror book, and Kitten. I mean, when you reached out, and like I was reading with your podcast, Kitten toes the line between strange fiction and also, I feel like it has like a foot in that world, but I don't know if it ever quite like fully commits.
yeah. Well, I was scared to read your book. I'll be completely honest because I was afraid it was going to make me feel things. I can read about like a vampire slaughtering a town or like really gory stuff. Like none of that bothers me. But the idea of having to sit with intense feelings is one of my biggest fears. So like in a strange way, I felt like very brave reading Kitten. Even though it's not traditionally what you'd consider horror, I just think the emotional landscape is so intense in this book, and I ended up feeling very brave reading it, and I really enjoyed it. Like it did not make me feel, it was not unpleasant at all. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
And it was really therapeutic.
oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I love that reaction actually. Like I feel like getting people to feel things is obviously the goal of any writer. So
Yes.
Yeah. And speaking of the similarities and differences, on that note, Michelle, I totally cried in The Lamb and Kitten reading them. And the funny thing too is that in our reading we did with Lucy, she got one of the same cards that you got, and it's a very specific card in reverse. So I was like, what are the odds of that? But I like to think the books are somehow connected.
Oh, that's so nice. You know, I've actually never done tarot. I like don't know what any of the cards mean. I don't know like a single thing. So this is my first my first experience with it.
Well, I don't either. And this podcast is kind of just my way of convincing Maya in a really elaborate way to teach me tarot. So I feel like this whole thing is kind of designed to, just for me to learn as well. So I'm absolutely a novice and we're in good hands. Maya will definitely take us through.
Yes, we'll explain it. So you can go into this not knowing anything and we'll make it all work. So.
Yes. Well, I think maybe let's just start before we get into the cards, and you can maybe just tell us a little bit about Kitten and the setting, the characters, and kind of what you set out to explore in the novel.
Yeah, so Kitten, I always describe it as a coming of age novel because that's what I set out to write more broadly. But the premise is, it follows a young woman who's fresh out of college. She's estranged from her mother and she's far from home, and she becomes slowly and then increasingly obsessed with her older boyfriend's cat. They develop a bond that just becomes ever more dear to her as she drifts further from her mother. And I think like when I was writing the book, I discovered I really ultimately wanted to write a coming of age story about what it means to grow up, especially in your early 20s. I feel like a lot of coming of age novels focus on like teenagehood or childhood, and I love those novels too. But I wanted something that focused more on that really precarious precipice between when you're like the oldest version of the child self you can possibly be, cushioned by like school most of the time if you did go to school, and then like structure, and then last let free into the world. I feel like for a lot of people, the time after graduating is the time where they're reckoning with the openness and like the terrifying extent of possibilities in their life. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to explore that through the lens of animals and like creatures. I've always loved like little inanimate objects and like, I don't know, breathing life into things that might not, just like inanimate things. And like with an animal, it's, they're obviously alive. They are animate, but they're not human. And I feel like our relationship to them tells us so much about ourselves. I read The Friend after writing Kitten by Sigrid Nunez, and it's about this woman who like develops this really intense, really not relationship really, but she looks after one of her late friend's dog, and just like through caring for this creature, you sort of see her returning to herself a bit. I love books that have an animal in it, and I feel like it always illuminates the humanity of the characters a bit more. So I kind of wanted to take that to like the nth degree a bit with Kitten.
Have you read The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote about that years ago, and I interviewed someone who had written a paper about animals in that book, and it's such an animalic text. Like, I feel like people think of it as this turbulent romance or something, but I felt like the best love story in that were kind of between these characters and the animals that they encounter.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm really fond of that book.
Yeah, no, I love that it doesn't, like, those relationships don't insist on themselves, you know, like, it's like you said, people don't necessarily think about those relationships, but the book would not have its emotional weight without those relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And it's so interesting too against that political backdrop that's happening because animals don't know any of that. Like they're completely indifferent to like borders shifting and armies coming in. Like all they know is the thing that's relevant to them, which is none of our
like
human
the majority of them. It's beautiful and it's kind of frightening almost. It's like, I guess it's how people feel about babies as well. It's like, oh my God, this innocence is otherworldly and it needs to be protected, but also it's coveted as well. I think with babies, which is another, I think, big part of Kitten, what does it mean to like grow out of babyhood and like how you then experience love from either your parents or like those around you. I feel like with babies are also fun because they represent that state of innocence and being untouched from the world, but then they always lose, they obviously lose it. But with animals, they're kind of like a permanent state of their own existence, of a softer and more, you know, it's like, it's not less real. It's just different.
Yeah, no, it's completely. And I wanted to ask you before we get too much deeper, do you have a relationship to cats yourself, or were you considering other animals, or, you know, how did you land on choosing a cat to be kind of the character that runs counterpoint to Katie, our main character?
I mean, I've always loved cats, but I don't love them like more than other animals. I chose a cat because cats are like indifferent in a way that a lot of other pets aren't. I mean, it had to be a pet, I guess, so there's like dog versus cat. It couldn't have been like, and it has to feel like, you know, a characterful pet. So it couldn't have been a hamster or a fish. And I feel like cats are so indifferent to people. They're so aloof and they're so, I don't know, there's something very adult-like about a cat. They're so responsible and they look after themselves and they don't really need your care as a human, as opposed to a dog. I feel like they really need, you know, to be looked after. So I thought that would be an interesting and very fun tool to explore the themes that I was thinking about, which is like the line between childhood and adulthood and helplessness and agency. They famously just do whatever they want. Like you just like can't predict the next move, which is just always fun.
I ask partially because I have 3 cats, and reading this as a cat owner, I feel like you really nail a lot of behavior, and like we'll get into it as we get into the cards, but there's like some very interesting subtext woven throughout the book that I noticed, and it just really resonated with me as a cat owner myself.
I'm glad. I have a childhood cat, but I don't have a cat right now living with me in London. So like sometimes my friends would tell me stories about their cats and I would just write it down. I'd be like, oh my God, your cat drooled on you? Like that is great. I'm just stealing the cat's personality traits.
Silver is one for the ages. Like I would die for her. She's amazing. Oh, do we want to get into the cards? I feel like it might be the right moment.
So just for context before we start, I've been reading tarot for like 7 years now. And the longer that I've done it, I realize there's a lot of similarities between tarot and fiction. So it's a really helpful tool for me to process what I'm going through, my emotions. So we kind of decided to combine the two. I did a spread yesterday where I kind of just shuffle the cards and let them randomly fall out. I'm like, I'll let fate choose them. But as I was pulling them, I had Kitten in mind. So yeah, these are the 3 cards that came up, and we'll go into them today, but don't feel limited by the cards. We can use them as kind of like a starting off point to get into the book's themes. But yeah, excited to share them because, as Michelle said earlier, it is kind of spooky how we've done this. I think this is like maybe the 5th episode we've recorded now. And every single time the cards are super relevant. So let that say what it says. But
excited to see.
I think my reaction to this one, I think I texted you like, what the fuck? This is actually freaking me out. Like, it's like yours in particular, like, yeah, these cards are spot on. So
yeah. Oh my God.
Well, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just get started with the first card. But cool. This is the Seven of Cups. So it kind of has all these cups with like different illustrations in them. And this card is actually like perfect for Kitten because it's all about indecision and confusion. So usually it has like a lot of options in front of them and they're like struggling to make that choice or take the next step, feeling like very overwhelmed by it. And also a sense of clouded judgment too, because there's just like so much going on. So I thought this, of course, is just such a fitting card for Katie, the book's protagonist. Speaking for myself, and I'm sure a lot of other readers can also relate to this like aimlessness that she's facing as a recent college grad. And like you mentioned earlier, it's this very tenuous time where you're kind of an adult, but you're still, you no longer have that like safety net of like, oh, I'm in school, I'm still figuring it out, like whatever. And she feels a lot of that pressure to be this successful adult. We also see her comparing herself a lot to her wealthy older boyfriend, James, and to her friends. And I think one of the interesting things that really stuck out to me as I was reading it is she's kind of in this place where she's like, well, I'm just not going to make a choice because it's too stressful. But we realize that in her not making a choice, that's still a choice in and of itself. So I thought that was a really interesting concept that you played with in the book. So I was curious if you could speak to that aspect of her character and kind of how you arrived there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole book is about making and not making choices in a way, because the book ultimately is about agency and like our relationship to our own agency and our relationship to choice making, which I feel like is just one of the biggest things that we have to own when we enter adulthood. And look, when I think about childhood, I think about, I don't know, I'm one of those people who like my childhood wasn't perfect, but I always look back on it through rose-tinted lenses. And I always kind of just assumed that I was happier then than I am now, or like maybe my family was happier then than they are now. I'm like, I don't know, it's a tendency to romanticize the past. And a lot of that I think was because, you know, like I didn't have to make choices and nothing really had stakes. So if anything went wrong in my life, it wasn't on me. And maybe I wasn't like aware of that as a kid, but, and I feel like people are different. Like I have friends who are like, as a child, I just couldn't wait to be an adult and like make my own choices and like pick my own wardrobe. And I was like, I literally never thought about that. I felt happy and safe in a way that I knew the adults around me weren't. And I was like desperate to hold on to that. So the idea of choices was like always lingering, and Katie's relationship to choices is the thing that has to change in order for like the book, I guess, to say what I'm trying to say about growing older. And I think Katie not making choices, it can make for such a boring character. Like you never really want to read about a character who does nothing. So I realized that her lack of choices, to your point, has to also be a choice. And it all goes back to, I think, like with her character, I really conceived of her as having made one choice when she was young to never grow up. And then every non-choice that follows is a result of that like first strong delusional choice. She definitely has to learn how to make choices along the way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I love what you said too about being a kid and you're like, I know I'm kind of in this position where I don't need to worry about things that the adults do. But yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about coming of age stories in general, realizing like at what point am I over that edge into adulthood now and like what am I going to do with it now? So
I also really love the way that you portrayed there's this gap between what James and Isabel and some of the people Katie has met as an adult understand about her and about her past and what she's able to communicate to them. Because when I was at that age, I feel like I was just beginning to become aware of my upbringing and other people's upbringings and kind of recontextualize that for myself as an adult. And there are all these great moments where people around Katie almost insist on that these choices are obvious or easy. Like I'm thinking about James with her painting. He's like, you've got this artistic talent. You could make something of this. Isn't that an obvious path for you? And what she really struggles to process, like even within herself, is that her relationship to art is so entangled with her relationship to her mother and like different painful memories. And it almost is like she's in this freeze state at times that it felt very tied to like, I don't know if you would call it trauma. I kind of interpreted it as childhood trauma that she's struggling to process as an adult now. And I think it was a really beautiful portrayal of how the past kind of reaches into our present. And even if choices are technically available to us, sometimes we feel blocked or like there are these invisible obstacles that no one else can see. And that really just punched me in the heart, I think is the way I said it. Like just really hit me, struck such a deep chord. And I just think that the novel portrays that so beautifully. And like you said, it's a very intangible thing. It's hard to convey that.
I think like you said about like the past reaching into the present is something that I wanted to convey in Kitten a lot. Just the fact that like everything that we do and everything that we choose isn't, random or it's always connected to like something that we learned when we were younger or like something that like is going on in our lives at the moment. And you brought up childhood trauma, and I definitely think it's a book about that. It's just about the history. Like it doesn't even have to be a traumatic memory that Katie's dealing with, but it's just the knowledge of how her mother made choices and her mother trying to choose a career in art, but ultimately failing because of factors that she couldn't control. Like there's always things that you can choose and things that your choices still might not even make a difference if you want them to make. And I think we bear the weight of everything that our parents chose just by being their kids. And then we remember what happened to them. I don't know. I feel like we're always we have like a little data center of, the effectiveness of choice making. And I think factors like class and race impact how our choices actually play out in our lives. And for James, he can make a choice to say turn a passion into a career, and that is a less risky choice for him because he's privileged and cushioned by like, his own wealth and his connections. And it's just not the same for Katie or her mother. So yeah, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, and like you said, I feel like it's almost like she's living in the shadow of these tragedies of her mother's life that she might experience them as her mom having some unpredictable moods or maybe being neglectful at times. But like, I do think that she has so much compassion for her mother nonetheless. And, it's a tricky line to kind of navigate as someone's kid, to know that you needed certain things from them, but also to understand that the circumstances of their life just were impossibly painful. Like I really get that. So that's like definitely something that is a theme in my own family and my own life. And yeah, the way that you wrote that was so, I love that Katie doesn't lose her compassion, even when people around her like, well, just stop talking to your mom, just cut her off.
Yeah.
Just throw her away. And it's unthinkable.
Yeah. No, totally. And I think it's like, it's also like what her mom needs from her, right? She wasn't able to get what she needed from her mom. And it's weird to think that as a child, your parent can also need something from you. And maybe as a child, you shouldn't feel that acutely. But for Katie, she really does. And I really didn't want this to be like a novel about estrangement or like permanent in an estranged relationship. Like I wanted the novel to ultimately be about growing into the connections, opportunities in your life. Katie has that with James, her boyfriend, and she has that with like other people in her life that she slowly begins to learn actually are her friends. But she also has that with her mom. And I guess, I don't know if this is really a spoiler, but I think one of the biggest things that I always knew when I was writing the book, like throughout all of the drafts, was that I did not want to make her mother a villain, essentially. I wanted to give her also life and a story and the possibility of redemption.
I love that. I guess like a more optimistic way of interpreting this card, other than like, oh my gosh, I'm so confused by all these choices, is kind of showing that a character like Katie actually does have so many options in front of her and the world is her oyster. In a way, this card could also kind of symbolize the like underlying greatness that she's only now beginning to discover, and like kind of going down that whole journey. We talked about Silver earlier too. Silver almost serves as this mirror to her as well. And I love that you brought up earlier how like the animals can actually bring out the humanity in us as people. So yeah, just cool how it all connects.
Yeah, and like there's so many choices that Katie could make and it's beautiful, but also I feel like a lot of them are just so mundane, and it's not about making choices like, oh, who do you want to be when you grow up, or like what's my career now. It's like she in the end ultimately chooses how much rent to pay, or like where she's putting her bed. And it's, I don't know, like all of these small choices too, and our willingness and readiness to make them. I feel like there's a lot of weight there. It's not just like the big choices that life is about.
Yeah, and that's so real too, to like the early 20s experience of like, yes, some things are deep, but some things are really not that deep. Like if I think of the things I was worried about in my early 20s, I'm like, girl, just relax. Like it'll be
definitely.
I had a conversation with a friend for many years. We would always bring this up of just absolutely no one prepared us for how difficult that time of life was about to be. Like, you know, a heads up would have been nice. Like, hey, just FYI, it's about to be really confusing and ambiguous for like a couple of years. And I feel like
so romanticized.
it's so romanticized. And it's kind of like almost like the marriage plot where, like you said, most coming of age stories end with, you know, like portrait of the artist as a young man. He's going to go to Paris and become a great artist. And I love in Ulysses, we see the aftermath of that, of just, no, he didn't. He's kind of cringy, actually. So few stories give us that closure, and they kind of just skip the hard part, which is what Katie's going through. Like, I really was struggling to think of another story that looks at that time of life specifically. And as Kitten evidences, like there's so much conflict and so much richness and so much character development that we go through at that age. It's just it's hard to write about because it's so intangible sometimes and so mundane.
Yeah. And it can also feel kind of like navel gazing and like self-more. Like who really wants to read? I don't know. Like there's bigger things than not knowing why your roommate's mad at you. You know, like there's bigger things to worry about in life. But at the same time, the psychodrama being in your early 20s, when you have no tools to like deal with everything that's coming up, and you're experiencing everything for the first time, I think it feels small compared to like so many other things that are going on in the world and life. But it is still true.
You brought up class earlier too, and that was another thing that I remember really vividly from being that age. College is this equalizer where maybe you're living on campus or you're living in an apartment. You don't really know who's on scholarship and who's got their parents' credit card, or maybe you're like vaguely aware of that.
Yeah.
But I remember graduating and I went to a university that had like a pretty, you know, wealthy elite class of society attended, and I was not part of that at all. I was completely unaware of that until I went to school, and it was just absolutely shocking to me how abruptly class became visible just in the choices that people were making. Like people who jetted off to Europe just to like sit in cafes and read, or people who quit their job because their first job was like kind of boring and toxic. And I just had to figure it out. Like I just kind of had to, and I wasn't medicated. I didn't have therapy. Like I had no resources. I was just like, you know, going through it. And it was just such an interesting experience just to kind of have that shock of realization that not everybody kind of has equal options at their disposal.
It's like when you're in college and it's like Thanksgiving break and you go on Instagram and like you're seeing everybody's houses and you're like, what the hell? Yeah. Like, you have a villa in Italy. I think it's
literally
really funny.
Yeah. And they'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to, you know, the island house. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Everybody knows how to ski. You're like, okay. I didn't know like this was like a good skill that everybody had.
I know. It was shocking to me. It was like a whole other world. I felt very naive. I felt very country mouse, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it's simultaneously frustrating, but also such a relief in a weird way. Because it's like, on the one hand, like, oh, you guys really have it like that. But then on the other, it's like, oh, okay. So maybe it's like not personally my fault that things aren't falling into my lap because I don't have like the money or the connections that like all of these people do. So, yeah, I don't know if you two felt that way about it too.
I was like, well, why can't I also have these? Like, and it was actually quite depressing for me to realize, because I think anytime you awaken to like the reality of the system and you're like, okay, so I don't know, I guess for me, it was hard to reckon with that. I can't do anything about it even. But I think for Katie and someone like a character who is so inclined towards passivity, it's almost like an escape. She's like, well, Lou and all her friends are just a different kind of person than I am, and so I won't even try. I'm like, I'm just gonna, you know, look after this cat. When you brought up, Michelle, like the equalizer of college, when you go into college, for a lot of people, the first time you become aware of all of these different class systems, but then I feel like there's still a fantasy of like, okay, we're in the same space, and like you are in the same community, and you're rubbing shoulders with the same people, and like you're friends with them. I felt like there was another awakening for me after college when people just slowly returned to their lives. The people who maybe grew up really affluent just slowly went back to like their family businesses or stuff. And like we were like, I feel like simulating life for a bit in college, but then ultimately a lot of people just return to like where they're from. And I don't mean that just like geographically, but like, you know, socially as well. It's just interesting. I feel like class is something that really follows us everywhere. And it's possible, I guess, to move through class spheres, which is what Katie sort of does and what she really struggles with. But at the same time, your home is always in you, you know, like the place that you first grew up in is still the place that you feel most comfortable in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the place where Katie is from, it's just not a place that anyone in her current life has any awareness of at all. They would never visit. They've never been there. They might have kind of a romanticized or like vague understanding, but like there are just some moments with James and Isabel and their friends. It would be easy to paint these wealthy people as being so out of touch and so, you know, villainous, and you do something much more interesting. So I kind of feel like, yeah, the next card is kind of all about that.
Yes. So the next card is the Lovers in reverse. So upright, it's like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, but this is it in reverse. So in reverse, it's kind of about like the opposite of what a healthy relationship would be. One way to read this card is obviously through her relationship to James, which is her boyfriend. But I was really curious about looking at it from the lens of her relationship with her mom, just because we know that they do have a very kind of tense, fraught relationship. There's a lot of like hot and cold that goes on in their interactions. And for me personally, there was a line in there that like really hit home for me where she's pretty much saying something along the lines of, again, during this time where people are like, just cut your mom off, or like, why would you let her treat you that way? And she reveres and fears her mom so much at the same time that she pretty much is like, well, she's not even like a human to me because she's just like so much more than that. And for me, I felt like that really hit home because my mom is from Guatemala. And so I always kind of had this sense that my relationship to my mom was so different from people who were like fully American and assimilated in these ways. And so that really spoke to me. And on top of that, mother-daughter relationships in general, I feel like when they're not healthy, there's something so deeply embarrassing about it because you're like, oh, this isn't the relationship I should be having or that I'm like told I should be having with my mom. So like, what do I even do with that?
Yeah, and then the guilt of feeling embarrassed or like questioning
Yeah.
the rightness of a relationship with your mother. You're like, what the heck? Like I am betraying her by like, you know, even comparing her to like the more, I guess, in the situation, American model.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the way that I interpret it too within the card is like, oh, of course Katie is going to have so much self-doubt and imposter syndrome because the very person that should be showing her this unconditional love or the love that she thinks she should be getting from her mom maybe isn't giving it to her in the ways that she thinks she should. But again, to Michelle's point too, it's like you could have just made her mom a villain, but instead she has this duality where you see her like try to show love in her own ways, like when she gives her a little bit of money here and there because she knows she's in a pinch. It might not be a life-changing amount, but it's her way of showing she cares, even if maybe she can't like vocalize it. So yeah, the dynamic between them meant so much to me. And that was the point in the book where I was sobbing because I was like, oof, this is like too real.
Oh my God. I've never seen the lovers upside down. I think that was a thing, but I think that's such a perfect and apt metaphor or representation of just like the relationship that Katie has with her mom. It's like something has gone wrong. It's not that they don't love each other. It's just like a slightly demented love. That doesn't mean it's not a real or good love. And I feel like a lot of people in her life are telling her this love isn't working and it probably isn't serving her. Like it's not the love that she has for her mother is hurting her, but nonetheless, it's still like they love each other so much. And I feel like it's just love applied and expressed in slightly skewed and harmful ways, which is then what Katie does to the other characters in her life, you know, and like especially to Silver. And Silver as a creature sort of absorbs all of Katie's suffocating care and love that she is misplacing from the love that she wants to give to her mother. I wanted the book to really just be about love sustaining, even if it had like a sort of skewed and slightly harmful heart. I think this card is beautiful.
Yeah. It's also the one that is shared between your book and Lucy's, which I thought was really interesting. And where my mind kind of goes with that is like, I think something else about growing older and watching your parents age is going through that transition of they care for you when you're young and helpless. And eventually, you know, if you are lucky enough to have a relationship with them, you care for them. And I feel like in our age of therapy speak, people are quick to be like, oh, you know, you're parentifying your child. That's terrible. That has like a very specific context. And I think when you're growing up with a single parent, that's your family. And it's just an inherently different dynamic, is kind of the way it read to me in the novel. And I think that's another thing that maybe some of Katie's friends struggle to understand, that, you know, it's not really about like, there's the daughter role and the mother role, and those are very defined and they're totally inflexible. And really her mother's the one who's unwell. She's sick. She really does need help and support, and she doesn't have very much support system available to her. And I just thought that was like a very interesting card that came up just with their dynamic kind of becoming a little bit flip-flopped, and with Katie having this awareness that, you know, she doesn't get to just be you know, carefree child. Like, she has a relationship with this family member who really does need care. And by the end of the novel, not to give anything away, but I think she really discovers that in herself. She discovers this like capacity to give that maybe she's afraid she doesn't have. And yeah, that really moved me.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's what I wanted to achieve in the end. She discovers that she can care for something else, and not only that she can, but that she wants to, and that it is as fulfilling to her, and it can be as fulfilling to her as it is to be looked after. And I think a big part of her relationship with her mom and like the roles of parent and child, like for her with her mother, like because it was just them two growing up in a very white place, the lines are so blurred. They almost are each other, you know, like Katie's mom sees her as herself in some skewed way. She imbues her with the same passion for painting. And I feel like there can be a real morphing of identities and egos as a way to stay close as well. It starts off as something that's unintentional. We always take from the people that we love. But then eventually when Katie grows older and starts becoming her own person, as children inevitably do, she feels almost like by developing her own personality, she's betraying her mother. By becoming more different from her mom, she's abandoning her. So yeah, it's really just a question of like, when so much of your self-worth is tied into how close you are with a parent, how does that affect then the way that you love other people and see yourself?
And mentioning loving other people, this is a good moment to talk about James a bit, because I went into this thinking he was going to be, you know, rich, entitled, and I think a very common arc that we would see is like, she doesn't realize she's being treated poorly, and by the end she has like a empowering moment of walking away from this relationship. But James is not an outright villain. Like, he's very sweet. He's completely smitten with her, it seems. He's just flawed in that he's unaware of himself and his privilege, and maybe unable to understand her in certain ways. But I do think that there is, and I don't know if you intended this, or maybe I'm just reading way too deeply into it, but through Silver, I feel like there is this kind of thread of something a little bit darker with James that, again, I don't know is something that he's even aware of, but there's a couple specific details. So Silver is feral when he adopts her, and she's been TNR'd, which means trap, neuter, release. And so for anyone who doesn't know as much about cats or is not as obsessed as I am, that means that a cat is feral. It's, you know, neutered, so it can't have any kittens. And then it's released back into the wild, typically because it's unadoptable. It's too wild. And yet James does adopt this feral cat. And there's also two moments where Katie notices that Silver doesn't have claws. And I really wanted to believe that Silver was not declawed by James's family, but on the second mention, I was like, oh, I don't know. And for, again, anyone who doesn't have cats, it's considered now like mutilation. Like, it was very common practice, and it's still done, but it leaves cats with chronic pain and inability to care for themselves. And was that intentional commentary? Was that something that happened naturally, just through the writing of the book, organically? I just felt like that was such a deep cut and such an amazing subtext kind of woven into James and his family's characters.
Yeah.
And so curious about that.
You're like the perfect audience. As like, and like not the the vocabulary of cat speak, but yeah, Silver is declawed, and that was an intentional detail. I didn't want to linger on it too much because it obviously is a terrible thing to do to cats, and I think a lot of people do it to cats, not even knowing how painful it is for them and bad. So, anyways, I mean, I think really the reason I wrote it is that Silver's a parallel for Katie. It's kind of like the central metaphor. And she is sort of this like wild creature who needs care, but also is capable of living on her own. Like if she were left in, you know, in the wild in nature, she would have been fine and she would have lived a happy life. But she also met James, and now she has like a different life as a domestic cat. And she's a happy cat. She just, by someone intervening, has a whole new life. And Katie starts to feel this way a bit when the book progresses. She starts to feel, even though she chose and sought out a partner who would care for her, she starts to feel suffocated by the realities of this choice. And I really didn't want it to be a situation where he was taking advantage of her or she was taking advantage of him. I think they're both doing it to each other because they both want something from each other. And they both want things that aren't necessarily maybe the healthiest things to want in a relationship.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. A lot of people have, after reading the book, they're like, oh my God, like justice for James. Like he's such a good boyfriend. And I'm like, yeah, he's not some helpless random guy. Like he chose to be in a relationship with this woman. He's choosing her all the time. And yeah, it's just interesting. We kind of want to put people in these boxes of like, who's the wrong one in the relationship when they're both doing wrong things to each other. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people. Part of like why James's character, I think for me, was difficult to write and interesting ultimately where he landed is that he is a good partner to Katie. Even if he doesn't fully understand her, he really wants to. And I wanted to write about a relationship where what happens if you actually do find a good, fairly healthy, stable relationship, but you aren't ready for it, or like the way that you love isn't ultimately sustainable. There's lots of narratives about like, you know, recreating bad relationships that we had from our past into our adult relationships. What's less looked at is like, okay, what if you actually do find a good person and it still doesn't save you, you know?
Yeah. And like, I feel like another kind of difficulty in their relationship is that Katie does see James and Silver in a similar manner in some ways. She sees what she needs from them, but she doesn't fully understand like the fullness of their individuality. Silver is a cat with her own agenda. Like there are moments in the book where she wants to make a choice and Katie just sees her as this baby with no thoughts. And same with James. Like I think Katie doesn't fully understand. Like it said throughout the novel that a really pivotal event in his childhood is that his mom almost died. She was very, very sick. And we eventually meet his mom. She does pull through the illness, but it really leaves these deep scars on him. And Katie knows this, but I think just in the way that he doesn't fully understand her past, she kind of can't square that vulnerability with the way that he seems to provide everything for her and be so in control of his life. And you subvert some common tropes in ways that I felt were really true to life. Life would be so easy, right? If everyone was walking around twirling their mustache and announcing that they're a villain, but really everyone's a little good and a little bad. And we just kind of have the dials tuned differently depending on who we are, I feel.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the central trauma that James goes through, like she almost doesn't, I don't know, it's not that she doesn't care. It's that she, I think, struggles to see herself and her own traumas as valid. And so she also can't extend that to other people. But she learns, I think. And that's why with Isabel, who's another character in James's world, also very privileged, but also suffering in this very similar way to Katie, really having trouble with her own agency and lack of like a sense of self. I think only when Katie gets closer to Isabel and feels a sense of connection and sympathy and vulnerability together that she is able to actually start to see other people around her fully because she's able to see herself more fully.
Yeah. And I feel like they both kind of have elements to their personality where they're like a little bit self-sabotagey at times, whether or not they even realize it. So I thought that was another interesting element too, because it's like back to also her relationship with James. it's not that he's necessarily this villain, but maybe she's self-sabotaging a mostly good relationship or situation because she's just not equipped with the tools that she would need to be in one.
I feel like we're saying a lot, like these characters are not fully aware of themselves, but I think one of the pleasures of the novel is that you as the author are. And so we get all these moments of dramatic irony and tragedy and that squirming feeling of discomfort as the reader, where you just want to sit them down for coffee and be like, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to do. You know, like you said, it's a novel that has these psychodramas playing out in very, very small, quiet moments, but they feel big. Like you give them a bigness because there's that feeling of tension throughout. So it's just delicious.
That's really nice. I love that compliment. Like that really means a lot to me. My favorite thing about reading is when I can tell the author just knows the character and there's so much more to the character than what's written on the page. Honestly, like some characters came more easily to me though. Like James, I really struggled with him. I had to write so many pages of backstory, things that he was saying and like dialogue that didn't make it in. Yeah, he was more elusive to me. So I'm glad that came through.
Yeah, my favorite James moment is they're driving to his family's beach house and Katie really has to pee, but she can't even stand up for herself to be like, we need to pull over. And so she pees herself and it's very like funny and tragic. And James just says, oh, Katie. Takes care of her. And he's like, you know, he's almost like a child in that moment, but he's just, oh, Katie. Just,
yeah.
He's like, you serious? Sweet. Oh my gosh. Well, it just sort of brings us to maybe the last card, which also was very fitting. And Maya, you pulled these in order, right? Like we're talking about them in the order that you pulled them too.
Yeah, so it's interesting that the last card, it's kind of like this whole sequence of like what we're seeing as the book goes on. The last card is the Four of Cups in reverse. So this is what it looks like upright. It's this woman kind of ignoring these cups that are being presented to her. So when it's in reverse, it's more about accepting an outcome, having a new outlook on life, having new options available to you, which I just think is so beautifully put for where the book ends, where we do see Katie with more of this agency and more self-actualized, I guess. I'm just always thinking about books and how they end because for me, like as a reader, especially, everything's leading up to these final moments and how different is the character in the beginning from who they are in the end. And I think we really get to go on that journey with Katie throughout the book. So did you always kind of have that ending in mind or that kind of journey in mind? Or was it something where as you got to know the characters better, you decided like, I think I'm going to go this direction with it?
I didn't always have that ending in mind. I really wanted to get the ending right. I guess that's kind of a moot point. I feel like every author would want to get the ending right. I guess my first draft, I had written an ending that was less optimistic. It was more flat and kind of like, okay, that's it. It felt more like an ending and not like a beginning. And I have a strong belief that endings should feel like beginnings in novels. And my favorite endings in novels are endings where it's like, okay, now I can see that everything is set up for a different world and like more and more and more for the characters inside them. So I rewrote the ending to be more, I guess, I don't know. I also don't want to spoil things, but ultimately like Katie finds connection and she reconnects with her mother. And while that was always going to happen, I think, because I wanted their relationship to one that was growing and evolving. I think with the ending that I ended up writing, I had to workshop it so much to do justice to the fraughtness of their relationship, but also hint at the fact that this would not be their last phone call, or even if it was in that year, there would be more and more, hopefully. This card is so apt because the spirit of the novel to me is really about opening, and it's about being surprised by the possibilities of your life and being at the beginning of the rest of it and not being terrified. So yeah, I think the ending, I really wanted it to capture that mood.
It definitely does. I love what you said too about how like the best endings usually feel like beginnings. Because I feel like for me as a reader, that's what makes characters live rent-free in my mind. Because I'm like, oh, the way that ended, like, I wonder what she's up to now. Or like, where is she? What's she doing? So I love that.
Like, I kind of hate when an author tells me exactly how a character, how their life has ended within the book. I love when I feel like I'm leaving the character behind, like sadly, but they have a whole other life outside of me now that I don't get access to.
Yeah. And I feel like there is a nice bookend in the novel where we start and she's in this conflict with her roommate, and it seems like it's going to be a friendship ending moment because she can't pay rent and utilities, and her roommate's kind of annoyed about it. And we feel like we're starting at an ending, but then there's this great moment with her roommate Lou where Lou just says, "Oh, I was just being a bitch. Like, it's fine." And this like this huge like drama that we feel like is so important at the beginning of the novel turns out to be very forgivable and easily overcome. And I love that it's really not Lou who changes. Like, Lou is one of these people who is who she is, and she's very good. But it's Katie who changes. And Katie, like you said, she has this realization of like, oh, this isn't just my roommate, this is my friend. Like, we aren't just people who happen to live together. And Lou's kind of like, I've chosen to live with you for 4 years. Like, we're friends. And Katie just doesn't. She has such like low self-esteem, or like, you know, she just doesn't understand that people care about her to the extent that they do. And I don't know. Lou was just, I think everyone needs to have a Lou in their life, even though Lou is a hot mess in her own way. Like, I love her.
Strong personality. No, but I love that point that it feels like an ending in the beginning, but you know, they reconcile, and like something that feels so dramatic and big and life ending turns out to actually just be the beginning of something else. And so many of things in Katie's life feel big and dramatic and life ending, I think, because she's suffering from this estrangement with her mother that was actually quite permanent for her, or it feels permanent because it's, you know, it's only been a year, but like that's the longest time that she's ever not spoken to her. At one point I wrote this conversation between Isabel and Katie where Katie's opening up about her friendship drama with Lou, and Isabel's like, you know, like, I like to think of relationships as these movies where you think you're at the end of the show, but it's just like act one or whatever. And it's like, she's kind of gormless and a little naive, and it's such a cliche thing to say, but it actually also is true. And I wanted like that to be shown through the novel. And I think Katie hears that and she doesn't believe it at first when Isabel tells her, because she's like, oh, well, Isabel's just like, that's not what love is. Like, I know what real love is. It's like painful and permanent and damaging. But yeah, it is those things for her, but it can also be forgiving, and those big moments can be small.
Yeah. I think it was really smart too to choose the first year of estrangement, because, not to make it about me, but I am estranged from my parents, and I was adopted, and I'm estranged from my adoptive parents. And like that first year of not talking to someone, it really is like you're just beset with all of these milestones of, it's Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate. It's Thanksgiving, it's their birthday, it's Mother's Day. And even if you know you're making the right choice for you, like that first year, you're just hit with all of these checkpoints of, are you going to continue not speaking to this person? Are you really going to let this day go by and not say something? And yeah, the significance of birthdays and aging, it just felt very true to life. And yeah, it's a really, I think that was a really good choice, just like having her navigate this first year when everything is so new and so painful. Whereas as the years go on, it's been like 5 years for me now, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Father's Day. I didn't even know. Like, I forgot. Time kind of blurs the edges of grief, but when it's still fresh, it's so ripe for conflict and reflection and growth, and just the intensity of feeling that Katie's going through.
They're so alive in your mind. You might not be like seeing them or talking to them, but you're thinking of them constantly. And I think Katie has that with her mother. Even if she hasn't spoken to her mother, in a way, her mother is more present in her life and like influencing her life more than she was if they were speaking. Because now she's like acting out, like doing crazy things with a cat, like just, you know, crashing out and like being a horrible friend and roommate and girlfriend. And it's because she can't stop thinking about her mom, and she doesn't know that. I think a big thing for Katie is like, okay, if I'm thinking about my mom all the time, like it's actually the reverse is true too. Like her mom is thinking about her constantly, and it shows in those little gestures when they do speak again. Like she sends her some money, or like she's, you know, like trying to reach out, but she just doesn't feel comfortable or just can't. Yeah, just like the obsessiveness, I think, with which like estrangement can turn a relationship into something that is it's completely different, but it doesn't mean that that person is just like gone from your life. If anything, it feels like, for Katie at least, they're more there than ever.
Yeah. And it's not like a breakup where if James and Katie break up, they would both be okay. You know what I mean? I think we leave them in a place that is ambiguous to some degree. But like when it's your mom, when it's your person who gave you life, their DNA, they live in you in this very real biological way too. And like you said, life is long and strange and has all these twists and turns, and people leave and come back. And I mean, if you wrote 10 sequels and traced Katie's life, I don't think you should, but if you did, I would read them all, and I would be so curious to see what shape her life takes. Like, I think you really leave us at the perfect moment, but also it definitely left me feeling so curious about where life is going to take her next, because it really is that opening up in that beginning.
Yeah, that's really sweet. I honestly have no idea what's in store for her. I feel like she could become anybody now because she has spent so much of her life not living really, or like not even being herself. I feel like once you start learning that your life can be different, all bets are off. I don't know. In my early 20s, there was a moment where I was like looking around my first apartment and I was like, oh my God, I bought everything in this room. Like, this room is me. I made every single choice, whether I picked up something for free off the street or like I saved up for this painting. It was just so crazy to me that I could make something like that. Like that I don't know. It was such a small but like huge epiphany that I had. And I think like just becoming aware of like power that I had over my life. I don't know. I feel like I had to get through all of my 20s to get to that very simple realization. And then nothing was the same almost. Obviously life was the same, and like I still had the same struggles and insecurities and doubts, but I think you only really need to feel your own power and control once for it to set off a whole new way of engaging with the world, even if it's like a small shift.
Yeah. No, that's so relatable. I moved into a house. Like I said, I live in a rural place. So I moved into a house, and I had lived in apartments my whole adult life, and it had these built-in bookshelves in the living room. And I had this realization, like, I get to put my books on the bookshelf, and it's not the family space where the family books live. Like, it's my house and my books that get to be in the front room. And it just blew my mind. Like, it still blows my mind when I walk by and I'm like,
yeah,
who would do this? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, you're like, this is me.
Yeah. Well, and not to turn the tables on you, I know we've been talking about the book quite a bit, but like, it also feels like a very fitting card for a debut novel and this new phase of your life opening up. And what does that moment feel like for you, having worked in publishing and now kind of being on the other side of it as a debut author yourself?
It is a crazy, wild experience that I am constantly reminding myself to just experience, to like let myself experience it, to not like freak out about, and to also try to enjoy it and be grateful for it, because it is everything that I wanted for so long. Beyond just writing the book, there's so much that goes into selling your book and making it happen. And part of that for me was like, I don't know, I used to work in publishing and making sure that I kept those relationships alive, like in the years that I left. Even before I started writing my book, I was like, I still want to, connect with these people. This editor I worked with, I sent her like an email when I read a book I liked, or I saw a book that she edited really well. Just small things like that where I felt like even when I wasn't writing the book, I was doing things that was in like the universe of making this book be real. And when I first sold Kitten, it was another like, oh my God, I bought everything in my room kind of moment where I was like, I made this happen myself. Like, I had so much help along the way, but the help that I got was also something that I sought out. And I don't know, I guess it was just this realization that everything that I did mattered in a way. And even when I was like 20 and flailing and wanting to quit publishing, which I did, every decision that I made led to, I don't know, this is sounding so cheesy, but it really was kind of like a moment where I felt for the first time like quite capable. I remember just feeling like I have to remember this feeling because for my second book, I need to remember that I can do things. So yeah, now there's a lot of noise with marketing the book, and like obviously it's coming out later this month. I feel like I've been engaging with the book from a different way and it's a bit uncomfortable at times. Like I'm doing lots of like social media marketing, and it can feel like I'm removing myself from the book a bit. But then I just have to remember that I'm doing all of this because I love writing the book. I love the book and I want the book to do well and to find the people that like I hope it finds.
Yeah. Well, it's all super well deserved. And I love the analogy of looking around the room and taking it all in, because I feel like something as big as publishing your debut novel, it's easy probably along the way to feel like, oh my gosh, is this all going to work out? But every decision really does kind of have that domino effect. So yeah, I'm sure it's a lot to take in, but probably, like you said, good to remind yourself, I really did that. Like, pat on the back.
Yeah, no, completely. I remember when I first started like submitting the book to agents and I was like getting my first responses. I think there's just like something so irreplaceable about feeling the fruits of your labor come to you. I think that's why people like making things like baking or like making art. You can actually see what you've done. And I feel like, I don't know, this kind of, I'm going on a tangent now, but like why like sometimes corporate jobs can feel so alienating because you never really see the real impact of your work and you kind of feel like you're doing something for like nothing just for a paycheck. So with the novel and with like so many other things in my life, like it can be so rewarding to realize like, okay, the effort that I put in actually yields something. And I just have to remember that because a lot of times it can be like you're grasping in the dark. It's a weird time to be in. Like I'm trying to like be present and enjoy it.
Yeah. I've been, this is like one of my common soapboxes that people are probably going to get sick of hearing me talk about, but like, I think we're very overdue for sincerity and earnestness. I really feel so exhausted by ironic detachment. And like, I love postmodernism. That was my focus in college. I like studied all these novels and there's a lot of things that I enjoy about that tone and that voice. But I do think it's genuinely very, very difficult to be perceived and be proud of yourself and to feel like confident in what you've made and that you want to stand by it and that you're excited to share it with people. Like, I think it's a lot easier to kind of feign some detachment or feign some disinterest or, oh yeah, like, you know, this novel it was fine, but like my next one's going to be even better or something. Like, you know, but I really like, it's not that often that I could not put this book down. I was reading until like 1 a.m. and my bedtime's like 11 max. Like I just really like you put something in this book and I couldn't figure out exactly what the magic trick was, but it just is compulsively readable. And I'm just so excited to get to witness the beginning of your career as a novelist. And I'm so interested to see you in the future. If you choose to write more books, I'm so curious to see what you might choose to explore next, because it really just, yeah, this book just grabbed me and I just could not put it down until I finished the story. So
that's so kind. Thank you. Yeah, it's weird. I feel like I want, you know, obviously I want to love the book and be its champion, but sometimes I do feel like, oh, like, especially now, like a few years down the line from when I first started it, it's easy to give into the cynicism and the detachment that you were speaking about. Like just saying like, you know what, this is just my first book. It's not even a big deal. Like it's not, I actually didn't write it. I don't even care. It's, you know, less painful than admitting that you put everything into it and you are proud of it. Or like I was proud of it, you know, and I still am. So yeah, that's very kind. It really means a lot to me, especially in this like pre-pub era where it can be so destabilizing to, I don't know, like especially being an author on social media, I get tagged in reviews. I've like turned off tags because it just, I can't deal with it anymore. Like even like the good reviews, I still feel like I'm engaging with my book such a different way that I want to be, and it just feels like too much. It's just nice to hear, so thank you.
Well, it's so well deserved. We are very choosy about who we're inviting on the show, and we're only, you know, all of these conversations are with authors whose books we like really genuinely, sincerely find fascinating and interesting and thought-provoking. And I think that's one of the joys of this project. Like we, in some ways, are collapsing that very healthy distance between reader and writer, but I feel like the cards have kind of turned out to be this nice neutral medium where it's almost like, hey, we didn't choose to talk about these things. Like this is what the book wanted us to talk about. So
the cards are amazing. Like I'm like, should I get a tarot set? Like, I'm really actually shocked that those cards came out in the order that they did.
I know, yeah. It's pretty spooky. I feel like we're going to get accusations of faking, but
It's all real.
it's all real.
I swear. But I have a running theory too, though. I feel like I would like go out on a limb and say that the vast majority of people who enjoy reading fiction would totally love tarot if they felt any kind of interest to get like into it, just because it's all about interpretation and symbolism and processing. And yeah, I just feel like the overlap makes so much sense. So that's why we're excited to do the podcast in this format where it's like just being guided by what the cards say.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like I was getting really excited even before you explained the cards to me. I was like, okay, what do I think this means? You know, like it's just narrative. It's storytelling. I buy it.
Speaking of storytelling, we always like to wrap up with a standard question for anybody who reads Kitten and wants to stay in that mood or that frame of mind. Do you have any books, movies, any other media that you would recommend to people that might be like a nice companion to Kitten?
There's like several that come to mind depending on like what kind of mood they want to stay in with Kitten. Like I think if they enjoyed like almost sinister mother-daughter relationship and like the violence of codependence, I'd recommend Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. I just love that book, and it was a huge inspiration for me actually in my writing. It's such an intense mother-daughter relationship, and it's about this woman who goes to Spain with her mom, who is a hypochondriac, to like seek increasingly bizarre treatments for her mother's mysterious illnesses. You guys should read it. It's, if you haven't already, it's really good and beautiful, just like sumptuous and like sexy somehow. And then I don't know. So I watched Poor Things like while I was writing Kitten, and I really felt like it captured like something about Bella's character as this baby who is discovering the world for the first time. It captured something about the intense terror and beauty and like otherworldliness of childhood and innocence, but also violence. It captured so many things that I had in my head while I was writing Kitten, and they're such different stories. It's a movie and Kitten's a book, but I do think it has like that sense of play while also having like that undercurrent of darkness that I hope to have with Kitten. And then lastly, the Japanese writer Banana Yoshimoto, like a lot of her books are just so beautiful. And like, I feel like they are just about the everyday things and everyday relationships, but they feel like they carry a tint of magic to them. When I read her books, I feel like I'm like opening a jewel box where like the colors are a little bit brighter and the people are a little bit more kind or strange. I hoped for Kitten to carry like a little sense of otherworldliness or a little like, buzz of magic, which I love in Banana Yoshimoto's works.
I have one of her books on my nightstand, but I haven't read it yet.
Which one?
It's NP from 1990.
Oh, I have not heard of that.
It's about a writer who, there's a book that has a number of stories in it, and everyone who tries to translate it commits suicide before finishing the translation. And it's never been fully translated, and so no one in Japan quite knows what the book contains or what's driving people to end their lives. And so it's about a woman whose boyfriend is a translator and unfortunately does die while translating the book. And I just want to know what's in that book. Like, I'm desperate.
Oh my God. I'm really creeped out. This doesn't sound like the gentle, beautiful world that I was just conjuring. But
well, the description is something like, it's about love so intense that it could almost make you crazy or something like that.
Wow.
Like, it just sounds so, it almost is giving me like Ayazawa vibes. Like, if you've read Nana at all, that's kind of what I was envisioning, but I haven't read it yet. So I'm really curious.
Okay. I'm gonna check that out. But I was talking about the books Kitten and the Premonition, which I feel like maybe are on like a gentler realm. But that sounds amazing.
Oh, well, I haven't seen Poor Things, and I haven't read Hot Milk, so those are great recommendations. And I can't resist. I always am like, I should just let the author have the last word, but I can never resist telling people books that I love.
I think you would love Poor Things. Knowing what I know about you, it's very bizarre, but like lovable. Just watch it.
Bizarre and lovable is the best duo. I love my art, bizarre and lovable. That's what I want all art and stories to be.
Yeah, and I love The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I think is the same director, right? Was it Lathmos?
Yeah.
Yeah. That movie is not very lovely. Like, it's quite upsetting, but I did really love it. But yeah, the book that came to mind I was thinking about this morning, and I was really like racking my brain trying to think of a good companion. And the one I kept coming back to is Hotel Iris by Yoko Ogawa. Have you read that one?
I have not.
Okay. It's also a strange coming of age story. And it's about a girl who lives in a rural town in Japan on the seaside, and her mother runs a hotel, and she witnesses one of the guests have an altercation with a sex worker one night. And it absolutely electrifies her and sparks an interest in sub-dom relationships. Mm-hmm. And she ends up engaging in this like very reckless, like kind of dangerous relationship as a result. But it all happens over the course of a summer. And it's just this like really transgressive, fascinating coming of age story. And I have like a whole headcanon about this character and like what happens to her after the book. And just to be clear, This is like not a book that portrays safe relationships and kink, but I loved it. Like, I just thought that it was such an interesting, fascinating story. And I think about it all the time. So very different than Kitten, but also just like a really different take on a coming of age story.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I am adding it to my list. I feel like I've been in like a bit of a reading slump. I've like not been able to really read anything. I think just like the stress of everything, like the book coming out. But yeah, I think this and like the Yoshimoto sound very, very interesting. They're like hooking me.
Yeah, and they're both short. Like Hotel Iris is like you could read it in an afternoon, but
okay.
Yeah, I might set it down and stare at the wall after, but
a whole subgenre.
Yes, they just got beautiful new covers too. I have like kind of not as beautiful cover, and I might buy a second copy because the new covers are just so pretty. But
that's worth it.
Yeah, I think on my end, I feel like so many people have read her books, but I kind of got a similar sense reading yours. And I always feel weird being like, oh, this author's writing reminds me of another, because every author is so unique in their voice and everything. But I instantly thought of Sayaka Murata. So like Earthlings, Convenience Store Woman. She also had a collection of short stories called Life Ceremony. But I feel like they have that like, playful weirdness that I just like love. And it's such a specific feeling to capture, I think. But yeah, I think her works do that so well, and Kitten does that like so unbelievably well. So I would recommend her work to anybody who likes Kitten.
I love that. I love Convenient for Women. I love her strange, crazy little worldview.
And also her take on femininity, I think, is really interesting. Like, I think Katie's similar. Like, we see her in this dinner scene where she's the new girlfriend, and she's kind of expected to be like a polite guest, and she just isn't. She's not capable to filter. And there are moments when she kind of disrupts the social status quo in ways that remind me of Murata. So yeah,
I'm so glad.
It's a great recommendation.
It's something that I actually love about Katie. Like, I love that she like does what she does, and she thinks what she thinks, and she, I love that about her. She's like a cat in that way.
She is, very much so.
Very refreshing.
I think that's a great place to wrap up for today. And everyone go read Kitten. It's amazing. And this will be, I believe we're publishing a couple days after your book comes out. So we'll include an outro with like where to find it and everything, and we'll put a link to the show notes. But definitely gets the This Might Sound Strange endorsement as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. This was such a lovely interview. Like, I've done a lot in the past few weeks, and all the questions start to sound the same because there's only so many you can ask about a book that no one's read yet. And this was like such an amazing conversation. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad. We will be cheering you on for sure.
Thanks for tuning in to This Might Sound Strange. We had a ton of fun talking with Stacey Yu about her debut novel, Kitten, and it really allowed us to revisit what it was like to come of age and all the tricky trepidations that come along with it. Stacey really does such an excellent job transporting us into Katie's chaotic world, and I'm curious, do you have any chaotic coming of age stories you want to reflect on? If so, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Since we're a brand new show, we'd also really appreciate it if you left a review. And if you do, you can send us a screenshot and email us at sound.strange.pod@gmail.com with your best mailing address, and we will send you a little something in the mail as a thank you. For the latest updates, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at sound_strange_pod. And stay tuned for our next episode, which features Chloe Lauder, the author of The Flayed Man. It's a sapphic vampire novel set in the Mojave Desert, and the book's characters are still living in my head rent-free. So really think you're going to enjoy that one. Until next time, stay strange.